everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law. For today's story, we are diving into the uncharted waters where politics and law intertwine. From the origins of the RICO Act to its unexpected application against a former US president, to broader legal labyrinths that Trump is currently having to navigate, this is a story of unprecedented charges, historical firsts, and a perpetual debate between legal scrutiny and political vendettas. Buckle up, everyone, because this promises to be a roller coaster of insight and revelation. All right, everyone, let's dive into understanding the foundations of this entire case against the president.
Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. You know, I got you the greatest tax cut in the history of this country. Hundreds and hundreds of billions, probably trillions of dollars in student loan debt, which would have been very unfair to the millions and millions of people. I will call up Carrier, the president. March 5th, 2024, the same day that the radical left Democrats are taking me to trial. I wonder how that happened. They see Trump is leading by 55 points. Biden signs bill to defund the police, you know?
The RICO Act. Now, what is RICO and why does it matter? RICO stands for the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organization Act. Born in 1970 as Title IX of the Organized Crime Control Act, President Richard Nixon was the one who gave it a nod of approval when he signed it into law on the federal level. At its inception, the RICO Act had its sights firmly set on the mafia. Its main objective? To take down high-ranking members of organized crime syndicates. And we are talking about some heavy-hitting activity here, most notably perhaps drug trafficking. But the beauty, or perhaps the beast of RICO, lies in its evolution. Over time, its application has morphed and stretched far beyond just the mafia where it was originally targeted. Today, it's invoked against security fraud, money laundering, and even environmental crimes. But here is where things get really interesting. Each state also has the option to take the RICO Act on the federal level and adopt it and morph it into its own state version for its own unique circumstances, thus bringing us to Georgia's version of the RICO Act. While modeled closely after its federal counterpart, the Georgia RICO Act does have some twists and turns that make it stand apart. First, while federal law demands a pattern of multiple individuals connected to a common criminal enterprise, Georgia law for its part says, hold on, just one person can be an enterprise all unto themselves. All you need are two vaguely interrelated crimes working to some kind of mutual goal. And as for how connected those crimes need to be, the federal version of RICO requires continuity. That is, that the actions are part of a continuous series of acts. But Georgia's version of RICO is fine with acts that only occur during short spells, as long as two racketeering acts occur within a 4-year span, so there is no continuous requirement like there is on the federal level. Diving into the intricacies that makes Georgia's version of the RICO Act so powerful, Georgia doesn't skimp on what counts as a racketeering activity. Their version of the statute generously lists over 40 acts that can qualify as RICO-related acts that would help to demonstrate a pattern of racketeering activity. That is a far more extensive list than even what the federal law provides for. To fully grasp the magnitude of the RICO Act in American legal history, one only needs to look at its track record. It has been the tool of choice of prosecuting thousands of individuals and organizations in the United States since it hit the books. One highlight, the conviction of all 5 mafia families in New York City in 1986, a landmark case that showcased RICO's might and brought the mafia to an end in New York City. Interestingly, Georgia was not the only version to customize the federal version of RICO for its own state purposes. At least 33 states have also joined the fray and said, we'll have our own version, thank you very much. Georgia, however, saw the value of RICO fairly early on, becoming the 6th state to adopt RICO for its own purposes in 1980, molding the federal framework to better fit its needs and allowing for a far more expansive version of the law. So as we wade deeper into understanding Georgia's RICO case against Donald Trump, it's crucial to understand and recognize the unique contours of the act in Georgia's version of the law that shapes the Georgia proceedings. The lines between political move and law are becoming increasingly blurred in Georgia's version of the law, but with knowledge of RICO's history and nuances, we'll be better equipped to navigate the complexities ahead. With the foundation of RICO firmly set in our minds, now let's narrow our focus to the more specific and immediate issue. We are going to start diving deep into the specific charges against Donald Trump and the intricate web that's been woven around the 2020 election, particularly as it relates to Georgia. Here's the lowdown. Donald Trump, joined by 18 other individuals, faces indictment in Georgia. The reason, according to prosecutors, alleged attempts to upturn the 2020 election in the Peach State. Now, these accusations against Donald Trump are not simple charges. At the heart of it all, there's talk of an intricate, illegal scheme designed to reverse the 2020 election results. And guess what takes center stage? You guessed it, racketeering allegations. Yes, the very ones we discussed earlier. This charge is suggestive of broader plot by the prosecution, a suggestion of a coordinated effort, if you will, to unlawfully change the election loss into an improper win. But let's add some further color to this story. Georgia, in the 2020 presidential election, was more than just another state on the map. It was a pivotal swing state, with every vote casting weight. Soon after the election dust settled, whispers began to circulate. Rumors of Trump endeavoring to sway the election results into Georgia came into the forefront.
If Joe Biden is able to win this state, he will have accomplished something that we rarely see here, which is a Democrat winning state office.
We have watched the gap close. President Trump is still leading in Georgia, but some key counties are still counting votes.
A group of grand jurors in Georgia may soon consider charges against the former president.
We have breaking news. Former Trump attorney Jenna Ellis is taking a plea deal in the Georgia election interference case.
Former President Trump has announced when he'll turn himself in to face charges that he meddled in the 2020 election in Georgia.
Of course, the drama does not end with Trump alone. His circle, including attorneys Sidney Powell, found themselves in increasingly hot water, facing legal scrutiny linked to these same allegations. But of course, what makes this a particularly big deal is, in the end, it's not just about Georgia. This entire episode is a single thread in a vast tapestry depicting Trump's reluctance to acknowledge a 2020 election loss into criminal malfeasance. From official legal routes to other more controversial methods, at least according to prosecutors stretching into the illegal, he allegedly sought to contest the results in various states in ways that fractured the law. So we've taken a look at the RICO Act, delved deep into the charges against Trump.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
And now it's time to take a spotlight into the other key player in this increasing political theater, the prosecutor, Fani Willis. Hold on to your hats, folks. This segment promises to be interesting as any. Meet Fani Willis, the district attorney for Fulton County, Georgia, which comprises Atlanta. Taking the reins on January 1st of 2021, Miss Willis immediately distinguished herself as someone unafraid to flex the muscle of Georgia's RICO statute and has been using it to great effect. And here's an interesting tidbit. She isn't using it just against the mob or traditional crime figures. Oh, no. Miss Willis has applied this law to non-mobsters, including perhaps most notably teachers and principals in a so-called test cheating scandal, setting precedent for a broader application. But what is Miss Willis's stake in the Trump saga? Prosecutor Willis is the one steering this ship, leading the probe into whether former President Donald Trump and his allies attempted to interfere in the 2020 presidential election in a way that implies criminal misdeeds.
That I took an oath, and that the oath requires that I follow the law, and that if someone broke the law in Fulton County, Georgia, that I have a duty to prosecute, and that's exactly what I plan to do.
What was the spark that lit this investigative fire? A recorded phone call between Trump and the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, in January of 2021. Willis had her detective hat on since February, examining this call very closely. Of course, with high stakes comes even higher tensions. Willis has found herself under political microscope. Detractors have criticized her, pointing fingers at perceived partisanship. There have even been calls, albeit mostly unsuccessful, to disqualify her from the prosecution due to alleged political bias. But as for Prosecutor Willis, she is so far steadfast, emphasizing that her role is rooted in criminal justice, at least according to her, not a political vendetta, although many, of course, disagree.
You should want to have an accurate election, and you're a Republican.
We believe that we do have an accurate election.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have, not even close. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes.
Given Fani Willis's history, her penchant for deploying the RICO law is undeniable. Remember the Atlanta public school educators I mentioned earlier? Miss Willis used RICO against them. In addition to using the RICO law to go after public school teachers and principals, Miss Willis has also used the RICO law against renowned rappers. And with this pattern, legal pundits are pondering an even bigger question. Could Prosecutor Willis be using this statute not for legal ends, but to further her own political ambitions? In this intricate dance of politics, law, and influence, Fani Willis is a figure to watch closely. As the narrative continues to unfold in this increasingly dramatic story, her actions and decisions could very well shape the future trajectory of this monumental case, both in Georgia and even beyond. To fully understand why this is possible for Prosecutor Willis, we need to dive a little bit deeper into the novel application of Georgia's version of the RICO law. The RICO law, as described earlier, was a law originally targeted for the mob and used quite successfully to that end, but now is a tool used for broader purposes and is the one taking stage in this political drama. This is one hell of a twist on what RICO was originally designed for. The Georgia RICO law embracing the Trump saga is truly groundbreaking in its application. While the statute has flexed its muscles in various scenarios in Georgia, the targeting of a former president for actions taken, at least in part, while he was serving office, and also targeting of his associates and allies over an election is simply unprecedented in American law. However, it is important to note that Georgia's version of the RICO Act is what makes this possible, since Georgia's version is arguably the broadest version of RICO anywhere on any United States books. Even with all this flexibility under Georgia law, this is no free lunch for the prosecutor. With any RICO charge comes complexity. After all, imagine proving the existence of a widespread criminal conspiracy, arguably involving 18 different co-defendants. But each of these 18 co-defendants are ultimately being used by the prosecutor for a singular aim, showcasing the players as being willing co-conspirators to help twist the election in Trump's favor, making Trump the kingpin in this enterprise. The prosecutor has also, as part of their charge, leveled out non-criminal elements, such as tweets and meetings that themselves are not criminal, as being part of the acts as part of the conspiracy, which leads to an increasingly complex legal puzzle. What does this all mean for the case? RICO's vast reach might see defendants turning on each other, hunting for deals, and we've already seen that in part with some of the plea deals that have come in place. It also gives the prosecution a chance to charge on overt acts within a bigger conspiracy, even if those overt acts are not standalone crimes or even crimes amongst themselves, as long as they further the conspiracy in the prosecutor's eyes. Yet with all this power comes increased focus on this prosecution and how it might be being used as a political tool as part of lawfare rather than for true legitimate ends. The expansive nature of Georgia's version of RICO demands caution, particularly in these sets of circumstances, ensuring that it's wielded for justice, not just politics, which is arguably exactly what's going on here, particularly as Trump is trying to work towards winning the next election. And whatever we do, we can't forget that RICO's involvement in all this might see the case tangled in legal knots due to its complexity, the sheer number of defendants, and its possible overlay into federal issues, which might, at least in part, preempt some of this proceeding. A truly new legal frontier applies in this particular situation. As we tread these novel grounds, one thing is certain. This journey promises a legal drama, surprise, and countless debates as to whether this is being used by a prosecutor for truly legitimate legal ends or by an ambitious prosecutor using this to get the next political gig. While the Georgia RICO case presents some truly interesting and novel applications of RICO law, particularly as it applies to a former president and being used by a politically ambitious prosecutor, we also need to take a moment to take a look at the broader picture against Trump, because trust me, it is quite the legal landscape. The current charges against Trump also involve the mishandling of classified documents after his presidency. Taken all together, this potentially puts the president on the hook for crimes which, if convicted, could very well see him put in jail for the rest of his natural life. Even with all this being the case, however, the Georgia case is particularly notable for its truly novel application of RICO law and for the state application of charges against Trump. Even with this complex picture in place, however, the Georgia case stands out as a unique one. The Georgia case presents a truly novel application of the RICO law and presents a truly interesting threat by using state-level prosecution to go after a president for actions he committed while president. This is unique in American law, and the Georgia case presents the truly biggest problems going forward for the American legal system. No U.S. president before has ever faced criminal charges for acts he did as president by a state-level authority. This is a first. And the broad version of Georgia's RICO statute that's making it all possible in this particularly novel application raises significant concerns about prosecutorial overreach and fundamental due process. The entire nation is now watching Georgia to see whether this is legally proper or a mere political vendetta. So far, the case against Trump is muddied by the prosecution's own prosecutorial acts, but it is notable that the prosecution has gotten cooperation agreements as part of its pleas with several notable figures. This case is truly ramping up to be one to be seen, and as it is shown on camera, we will be following it every step of the way. Only time will truly reveal the true nature of these proceedings going on in Georgia.